Good morning, students of Algebra 2. We are on Factoring Review Day 3. Alright, so the final review day for factoring. So we've talked about factoring a GCF. We've talked about factoring a trinomial when the leading coefficient is 1. And today is what happens when that leading coefficient is not 1. So if you're in my class, when the leading coefficient is 1, I always call those the easy problems. And today, when the leading coefficient is not 1, those are a little more difficult, only in the sense that there's a little more work to do. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we always look for, no matter what, is there a GCF? Okay, let's assume there isn't, and then I have a trinomial where the leading coefficient, that a term, is not 1. So what we do is multiply the first and last term, so in other words, the a and the c. That makes some number. And then we find the factors of that number that also add or subtract to make that middle coefficient, so that b. And then remember, we take this term here and we replace it with two terms. Replace the middle term with two terms. And then we factor by grouping. And when do we factor by grouping? That's when we have 4 terms. So we'll see some examples here and it'll make more sense. Okay, so the first step, GCF, no GCF, so you multiply the first and the last term. Well, what's 3 times negative 25? Negative 75. And just like before, list all the factors of 75. And which of these can add or subtract to make a 10? Well, if they multiply to make negative 75, that means one has to be negative, one has to be positive. And it looks like these two here can make a 10 somehow. And what happens when it's mix and match, 1 plus 1 minus? Who gets that first sign? It is always the bigger number. Because what is positive 15 take away 5? It is a positive 10. So these two numbers, once again, multiply to make this number, which was 3 times negative 25. So they multiply to make that, and they add to make the middle. So then, the whole point of that was just to take this middle term, and we're going to rewrite it using those two new terms. Now it's just not negative 5 and positive 15, it's negative 5n, and then plus 15n. Did I really change this at all? Does blue equal blue? Yep, 15n's take away 5n's is 10n. So I didn't change this at all. I'm just changing the way it looks. So I'm going to bring everything else down. 3n squared comes down, negative 25 comes down. So now we have 4 terms, and we factor by grouping. So this is essentially 2 GCF problems smushed together. So how do we do this? Look at the first 2 terms. What can I factor out of those two? 3 and a 5, can't take anything out. How about the n's? I can take 1n out. N times what makes 3n squared? 3n. N times what makes negative 5n? Negative 5. Now I look at these two terms. What can I take out of a 15 and a 25? Well, I can take out a 5, and that's it. But remember, you have to take a positive or a negative out. So in this case, I'm going to take out a positive. I'll explain that in a second. Then 5 times what makes 15n? Well, I need a 3n. Notice what you see over here. 5 times what makes negative 25? Negative 5. So if you do these problems correct, whatever's in the parentheses is always going to be the same. That's like a checkpoint. Now I know I'm on the right track. So, look at these two right here. What do they both have in common? Well, they both have that 3n minus 5. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm factoring out 3n minus 5. So 3n minus 5 times what makes all this? Well, I already got 3n minus 5. I just need a n. And then I say, okay, 3n minus 5 times what makes all this? What am I missing? Well, I got the 3n minus 5, but I need a positive 5. And that is it. Okay, so these are the steps. What do we do first? Multiply first and last term, negative 75. Just like always, find factors of that number that add or subtract to make the middle number. If they multiply to make a negative, one's got to be plus, one's got to be minus. When it's mix and match, who gets this sign right here? The bigger one. This term got replaced with two terms. Now I have four terms, so we factor by grouping. When you factor by grouping, you need to factor the first two, factor the second two, and then essentially whatever's in the parentheses is going to be the same. Bring that guy out front. Then what's left over? N plus 5. Well, there's your n plus 5. Let's see some more examples. Is there a GCF? No. 3 terms, leading coefficient is not 1, so I need to multiply 5 times 4 makes 20. And then I need to list all the factors of 20. So 1, 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5, and that's it. Out of these, which ones can add or subtract to make a positive 12? The only one that works is a 2 and a 10. Now I got to think about my signs. If they multiply to make a positive 20, what do you know about their signs? Well, it's either a minus and a minus, because negative 2 times negative 10 makes positive 20, but they got to add to a positive 12. Well, those won't add to a positive 12. So what else multiplies to make positive 20? Well, what if those were both positives? Because doesn't positive 2 times positive 10 make positive 20? And what's the other condition? They need to add to make this. So that works out. So just like last time, this guy gets replaced with those two terms. Now it's just not a 2 and a 10, because I want 12x. So it's going to be positive 2x plus a 10x. Notice blue and blue. Those are the same exact thing. I didn't change anything, just the way it looks. Everything else comes down. 5x squared and the positive 4. Now I have 4 terms, so we factor by grouping. Look at the first two. What do these both have in common? Can I take anything out of that 5 and that 2? Nope. So look at the variables. They both have an x I can take out. X times what makes 5x squared? Well, I need a 5 and I need another x. X times what makes 2x? Well, positive 2. How about over here? A 10 and a 4. What can I factor out of a 10 and a 4? They both have a 2. Now let's take out a negative 2 or positive 2. Well, look at these signs here. This is how you know. If this is positive, that's positive. That's positive, that's positive. I'm going to take a positive out because I don't need to flip the signs. 2 times what makes 10x? I need a 5x. 2 times what makes 4? Positive 2. How do we know we're on the right track? When the thing inside the parentheses is the same. So, final thing. What are my factors? Well, remember that 5x plus 2, that thing that repeats, we'll put him out front. 5x plus 2. And what are the two other things? You got the x and the positive 2. So I rewrite that in my second binomial. X plus 2. And that's it. What would happen if I took a negative 2 out? Well, when you take a negative out, you flip the signs. This would say a negative 5x, and that would say a negative 2. But I don't want that, because I need these to be the same. So if I did take a negative out on accident, and I got a negative 5x and a negative 2, I would know that I have to go back and fix that, because I need whatever's in parentheses to be exactly the same. Alright, next page. Okay, no GCF, so I multiply the first and last term. 5 times 20 is 100. Here's all the factors of a positive 100. And which ones can add or subtract to make a 29? It looks like it's going to be 4 and 25. So if they multiply to make positive 100, it's either a negative 4 times a negative 25. That would work. But notice they need to add to a positive 29, so that's not going to work. So, what's the only other option? If they were both positive. They multiply to make this, and they add to make this. So I'm going to go back in here, rewrite this using those two new terms we just found. It's going to be a positive 4x and a positive 25x. Everything else is going to come down. So 5x squared comes down, positive 20 comes down. just like last time. What can I take out of these two? 5 and a 4, nothing I can take out. X squared and an X, they both have an X. There's my GCF. X times what makes 5x squared? I know it's going to be 5x. X times what makes 4x? Positive 4. How about over here? Look at the coefficient, 25 and the constant 20. What do they both have in common? A 5. Now the question is, should I take out a positive 5 or a negative 5? Well, do I need to flip my signs? If this is a positive and a positive, this is positive, positive. There's no reason to flip these around. So by default, we take out a positive. Now I can kind of cheat, look over here a little bit. I should be getting the same thing. Let's check it out. 5 times what makes 25x? 5 times 5x. Oh, yeah, just like I expected. 5 times what makes 20? Positive 4. So am I getting the same thing in parentheses? Yes, that's a checkpoint. I know I'm on the right track. Now let's just clean it up. They both have 5x plus 4. And what's the other one going to be? X. And what's next? Positive 5. So x plus 5. Now just like always, could I distribute this, and see if I get the original? Yep, you can always check factoring problems. Alright, last one. Multiply first and last term. 4 times 15 is 60. Here are all the factors of 60. Which ones can add or subtract to make a 16? So it looks like the only one that's going to work is 6 and 10. So if they got to multiply to make a positive 60, either it's going to be a negative and a negative, or a positive and a positive. But if they need to add to make 16, it's got to be positive, positive. So I'm going to replace this 16r with two terms. So we're going to use positive 6r and positive 10r. 4r squared comes down, plus 15. And factor the first two. Look at the coefficients. 4 and 6, they both have a 2 in common. R squared and r, the most r's I can take out is 1r. 2r times what makes 4r squared? Well, 2 times 2 makes 4, and I need one more r. 2r times what makes 6r? Well, 2 times what makes 6? Positive 3. Do I need to put any r's there? Nope, I already got it. How about over here? 10r and 15. Well, they both have a 5. And positive, positive. Yep, so I'm going to take a positive out. And I'm just going to cheat. I'm going to look over here because I know it's got to be the same. 2r plus 3, and I'm going to check. 5 times 2r. Looks good. 5 times 3. Looks good. So, which one repeated? It was the 2r plus 3. And do you remember what goes in the second one? 2r plus 5. Okay, that's it for our notes. Here are your homework problems. We have 4 problems, and you notice on the final page you will find the answers. Now, of course, if all you do is write the answers down and turn it in, you will not be getting credit. These are for you to check to make sure you're on the right track and getting the right answers. And if you get stuck, you can always reach out to me and ask for help. But I want to see some work and see if you guys remember how to do these. Alright, that's all I got. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.